matchup on the back of things like Thalia, Caracas, and so forth.
All right, so we have underway. You see Mitchell on the left here. He's the number 7 seed playing Bug Delver. Jason Smith and Death and Taxes starts the game. We see on an island. We are underway. And turn 1 play is going to be on Greg Mitchell. He starts off on a Deathrite Shaman. And it does seem like, I know, getting out early and committing to the board seems like the most important thing you can be doing in this matchup.
For sure, but for both decks, quite honestly. I think if the other player develops their board, they're able to leverage their mana advantage or mana denial tools, and it's important for both players to get on the board early and often. Both players able to do that. Deathrite Shaman for Greg here and Thalia for Jason.
Yeah, well, Jason didn't have a 1-drop, but he has quite the good 2-drop in Thalia here, and it dodges around any sort of Force of Will or Daze action. Looks like it's going to resolve here. And that's going to put a pretty big thorn in the side of a Bug Delver player, I would think.
Yeah, you look up and down this deck list, a ton of 1 and 2 and 3 mana spells. Thalia very well equipped to hassle Delver. Not going to be game over by its own like it is against some decks like Storm, but an important part of the puzzle here for Jason.
Yeah, it takes away that mana advantage that Greg got by playing Deathrite Shaman. You see Greg's hand, it's fairly land heavy right now. He does have some wastelands, and those tend to not be very useful against a Death and Taxes deck as it runs a lot of basic planes.
Although there are still some non-basics here. 4 Wastelands, 4 Rashad Ports, 2 copies of Horizon Canopy, and 2 copies of Caracas.
Yeah, Greg Mitchell going to go ahead and pay for that 2 mana Brainstorm, and we'll resolve that in just a second. And Studi goes for here. It looks like he has yet more lands right now, and it's kind of a hand that's really going to be hard against Thalia, right? Seems like he has all cantrips.
Yeah, this is, the strength of Thalia in this matchup. You see he's casting Brainstorm this turn, and there's a Tarmogoyf in his hand. Normally he would be able to Tarmogoyf, shuffle his deck with a Brainstorm, shuffle his deck with a fetch land, and cast Tarmogoyf, a great opening here. But instead, unless he finds a Deathrite Shaman or Delver Secrets, this is basically going to be Greg's turn.
Yeah, so 2 mana there. We'll see what he does. He's going to be able to continue developing his mana base, as you said here, but yeah, it doesn't look like he has. We'll see if he can put another creature down. He does. It's going to be Delver of Secrets. Had to crack a fetch land for that, so any work he did with Brainstorm to set up the top of his deck, it's going to be a blind Delver next turn.
And given how land heavy his hand was, I would assume Greg just sent back 2 lands.
Yeah, getting full use out of that Brainstorm. We'll pass back to Jason Smith, and he's going to go on the offensive, it looks like, with Thalia.
Yeah, Greg's just got to get presented here.
Yeah, so right now it seems like we kind of have the pair of early drops for Bug Delver. Thalia putting, crimping Greg's tempo a little bit, but it still feels like Greg's going to get to play his game. It's just going to happen a few turns later.
Well, that's really all the Death and Taxes is looking to do in the matchup. It's not going to just run you out of the gym. It's going to slowly pick away, disrupt your ability to play efficiently, and eventually take over the game with kind of an arbitrary swath of creatures.
Yeah, Wasteland for Jason Smith takes care of Tropical Island, denying more mana from Greg. No follow-up play for Jason Smith here. He leaves 2 mana up. We do see, looks to be a few more lands in his hand, but some action.
Yeah, some Sarah Avengers he'll be able to start deploying shortly.
Yeah, and that's enough. Greg Mitchell's going to exile that Wasteland and tap 2 mana to go ahead and take care of Thalia, trying to buy some of his lands back here.
And doing that right now, so Jason can't draw and play Caracas.
All right, and then a swing from Delver puts Jason down to 19. But Greg Mitchell has cleared up the board, and more importantly, has freed up his mana for the time being.
Although Jason with Source of Plowshares in hand can go back on the mana denial plan here if he chooses to. He can Swords that Deathrite Shaman.
And we'll see if he does that. It's Sarah Avenger. Now that it's turn 3, he is able to cast that spell. 3/3 Flying Vigilance. He has an attacker of his own, and right now an answer to what would be a flipped Delver. Now debating whether or not he wants to use that Swords, and if so, where he's going to put it.
It's very tempting to go after Deathrite Shaman here because Greg is on 2 copies of Underground Sea. It is possible he does not have green mana, and then you cut off a huge portion of his deck, most notably Abrupt Decay and Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, and he's going to go ahead and do that. So this is 3 consecutive turns that Jason has attacked Greg's mana base. First through Thalia, then through Wasteland, then through Swords to Plowshares.
Yep.
And Greg's going to draw. It looks like he's brainstorming what I believe is on upkeep here for his Delver.
Yeah, trying to set this up. And no Tropical Island or Fetch Land among these cards, so unless it's already in the hand, which I don't believe it is, Greg will be playing for a while here without access to green mana.
Yeah, it doesn't have green mana. He does have some weapons. You do see Tombstalker hiding in his hand. Greg Mitchell's graveyard getting quite full here. It's 1 mana, I believe, away from being able to delve that Tombstalker.
And Tombstalker is a huge threat against Jason, just substantially larger than anything he really brings to the table.
All right, Brainstorm flips the Delver Secrets into an Insectile Aberration. Third land is from Greg Mitchell, but as you said, it's not a green source, it's Wasteland. Looking at a board of basics on Jason's side. Greg's going to offer up that trade. Jason not interested. He'll go down to 16.
And the Sarah Avenger here, a little bit more valuable than the Insectile Aberration. Also, there's a lot of removal in Greg's deck, so I don't think he can afford to make that trade there.
And what a draw here by Greg. We were talking earlier about this, looking at his deck, you know, for creatures at 1 white, he's had some good 2-drops, some good 3-drops here. He's playing a 1/1 split of Mirran Crusader and the card he just drew right now, which is Bramaz, King of Oreskos.
Both excellent. I think Mirran Crusader a little bit better because the protection from color element is so valuable against Greg, but Bramaz is a high impact card. Funny enough, making a much larger impact in Legacy than it has in Standard or Modern.
Absolutely. Horizon Canopy is the land for Jason Smith. He's going to go ahead and make the Cat King here. You see just a big tank's worth of damage. 3-4 for 3. One of the more efficient beaters we've seen. It's going to draw a Force of Will from Greg Mitchell.
It is a very large threat, obviously, and can't be bolted, which is a critical card in Legacy, and synergizes with Caracas.
All right, another Tarmogoyf drawn for Greg Mitchell. It looks like he has a hand flush with green spells. Going to go ahead and swing Delver of Secrets. He is still keeping pace on the race as is right now. It looks like the last card he's going to get might be a Tombstalker here. We'll see if he can go for it. And there we go, Tombstalker delving away his graveyard. And that's take the whole graveyard. So if he ever does get that green mana for it, some Tarmogoyfs, they're going to be a little weak here.
Yeah, but that's okay. Tombstalker is large and in charge.
Draw here by Jason Smith, now under a bit of pressure from an aerial assault of Greg Mitchell. It's 8 power in the air. Sarah Avenger not able to attack. He does have a second copy, it looks like, of Sarah Avenger.
So now Jason has the option of either playing Sarah Avenger and porting Greg next turn, which may open up something like a double block on the Tombstalker, or casting Sword with the intent of playing Sarah Avenger and equipping the following turn. And it looks like he is going to go with the second route.
Yeah, Sword of Fire and Ice to play there. So he's going to take some damage this turn, but for some payoff down the road. But this turn's going to hurt.
Yeah, he is trying to get some dividends down the line, but is paying a very large cost this turn.
Yeah, 8 damage set to come from Greg. And yeah, I don't think Jason can make the trade. If he's playing the Sword, he's not going to trade with the Insectile Aberration. He takes 8, drops to 5. And more importantly, we see a green mana come from Greg.
Yeah, that green mana is a huge draw. Because Jason's on the verge of stabilizing there if Greg misses that turn.
Right now, it looks like Tarmogoyf is a 3-4. We have instants, lands, and creatures. Jason Smith does have an equipment for his Sarah Avenger. And remember, Avenger has Vigilance, so plays very well with a sword.
It's a good combo, but it might be too little too late here. We will see. The Sword of Fire and Ice does do some work. I mean, the Sarah Avenger can trade with the Tombstalker. This trigger can shoot down the Insectile Aberration, so this is doing some work. If Jason can find something like Source to Plowshares, he might, in fact, be in front of the race.
Yeah, and he had to do that work here. Remember, any 2 of those creatures would have been lethal. As it is now, Jason does have a line which he can take. If he trades with the Tombstalker, then he can pass the sword over to the other Sarah Avenger on the next turn and would be seemingly stable. That is, of course, unless Greg can grow the Tarmogoyf path up to a 5-6.
There's so many lines of play here. If Jason can play Mother Runes here, if it survives and the Sarah Avenger is able to trade with the Tombstalker, he's got the Tarmogoyf on lockdown and now can start really advancing his board. Every creature can be equipped with the sword.
Yeah, and an aggressive line here from Jason. Instead of going with the Mother, he's going to go with the Sarah Avenger. Doesn't have as much protection, but it does mean he'll be able to end the game very quickly and really force that trade to happen if Greg doesn't offer it.
Yeah.
Greg drawn for the turn. We surveying a board. He's so close. This Tombstalker is a lethal attack, so he can force the trade.
Well, a line of play that Jason has is, well, I'll trade my equipped Sarah Avenger with your Tombstalker. I'll take the hit from Tarmogoyf. Next turn, I'll move the sword over. Now that's bigger than your Tarmogoyf. It can't attack anymore. He can probably deploy some chump blockers, maybe Port Greg, something along those lines. So, as you mentioned, Jason's very close to establishing lethal himself. These hits are, the Sarah Avenger with the sword on it, that's a hit for 7 if Jason's feeling so inclined.
And if he doesn't want to take the damage, he can eat the Goyf, chump the Tombstalker, and he'll still get that hit back with a sword.
Yeah.
Remember, that hit is for 7 if he chooses to send the damage upstairs to Greg, which conveniently is not lethal, but it's very close. He's going to go with the line you mentioned here. It is a trade. He will take damage from Tarmogoyf, dropping down to 2 life. And another Tarmogoyf from Greg Mitchell.
But this is the spot Jason wanted to get himself into. He now has a Sarah Avenger that trumps a Tarmogoyf plus a creature left over in his hand.
Yeah, definitely can make that. He can just equip it and chump block with the Mother Runes. And if that's good enough, it's a 2-turn clock for Sarah Avenger.
The other option he has is he doesn't even necessarily have to equip this turn. He can simply attack for 3, deploy some chump blockers with the intent of using his non-flyers to block the Tarmogoyf, and then trying to finish the game next turn by moving the sword over.
Yeah, he's going to go ahead for the sword play. It seems like both of them play around about the same things. Like a removal spell gets both.
I like this play quite a bit because it gives him the upside of drawing a land or an additional 1-drop, and Jason has found another 1-drop. So now he has 2 chump blockers. He doesn't have to get a Sarah Avenger engaged in combat. And even if Greg has a removal spell here, Jason is still equipped with 2 blockers.
Yeah, great spot. 1 and 2 life. Looks like Jason will have lethal set up this next turn, and Greg's going to call, make sure that he makes the right play. Both Tarmogoyfs swing in. Have to imagine Jason... Well, he has to decide how he wants to block, I suppose.
Disfigure is something to consider, so...
Well, to be fair, though, the Mother of Runes is a lethal attacker here, so
yeah.
The Sarah Avenger isn't any better than any other creature.
Right. And Jason comes to the same determination, and this looks like it's probably going to be a concession momentarily from Greg.
Yep. 1 Tarmogoyf eats a Mother of Runes, Sarah Avenger eats the other one, and Jason Smith is up a game.
Very impressive. That was not an easy game for Jason to navigate there. He was behind there for quite a while, but Sarah Avenger plus sword gave him a lot of range, some card drawing, and he was able to just navigate combat well enough and find enough chump blockers to take game 1.
All right. Well, as these players move to the sideboard, we are going to move back to the booth. It is time once again for our trivia. This time we are giving away 6 months of Star City Games Premium. Remember how the trivia contest works. If you believe you know the answer to the trivia, sign on to Twitter and tweet that answer to us with the hashtag SCG Premium. At the end of our top 4, we will select 1 correct answer to receive 6 months.
And that question is, we're talking here about Jason Smith's Death and Taxes deck. We mentioned there's 2 different singleton 3-drops in the creature slot in his main deck. One of them we saw that game, that's Bermaz. Name the other one.
All right. So if you believe you know the answer, tweet it at us, and we will announce the winner of the 6 months of Star City Premium following our top 4.
Little hint, some protection from colors of significance in the matchup.
Yeah, I imagine it's pretty good here.
Yes.
Right.
And probably one of the matchups that this card is in the deck for, quite honestly.
Yeah, I would say because Bug has gotten prevalent right now in Legacy, that's what's getting this card back into Death and Taxes lists.
Yeah, sort of Feast and Famine, kind of the same logic. So moving on to the sideboard here. Jason Smith, our Death and Taxes player, has an Armageddon, a Cataclysm, a Council's Judgment, 2 copies of Either Sworn Candace, a Grafdigger's Cage, a Manriki Gasari, an Oblivion Ring, Pithy Needle, a Ratchet Bomb, 2 copies of Rest in Peace, a Sunlance, and 2 Wiltleaf Lieges.
There's some spicy cards in here, looking at like Sunlance, Wiltleaf Liege, Armageddon. These aren't things you always see in a Death and Taxes sideboard.
Yeah, I like the 1 Sunlance a lot here. It answers Delver of Secrets and Deathrite Shaman. Those are, of course, very critical to what Craig's trying to do. The rest of the sideboard, quite honestly, I could really take it or leave it here. There's not a lot of cards that seem that attractive in the matchup. Wiltleaf Liege is okay. There's 2 copies of Liliana the Veil, but that's most likely to be on minus duty on most boards that it shows up, not plus duty. And the rest of this, like I said, kind of take it or leave it.
Yeah, Death and Taxes is a deck that operates on kind of the same level of Bug Delver that's doing this tempo resource denial strategy. So in this matchup, most of its best cards would be in the main deck.
Right, and like you mentioned, Bug, all non-basic lands, very exposed to Wastelands and Port. It's weak to Thalia. There's a little bit of a Planeswalker element, so Phyrexian Revoker is a live card. Also, there's Deathrite Shaman and so forth. All these cards are that Jason already has in the main deck. have some utility against Bug, so it's not surprising that he's light on real good sideboard options for the matchup.
He would maybe have to board in Council's Judgment if there were a Terminating Nemesis in Greg Mitchell's deck, but as we see, that's not there, so he can leave that in the board if he wants to.
A potential haymaker for Jason in this matchup are the 2 copies of Rest in Peace. He's facing against a deck with Deathrite Shaman, Tarmogoyf, and even Tombstalker for good measure, so that's a card that can do some good work here as well.
All right, on Greg Mitchell's side of the board, he's going to probably want to kill a couple more creatures. Looking at the cards he has to do that, you'd have to go first to a card like Abrupt Decay and these 2 Golgari Charms. Golgari Charm is one of the few ways he has to get around Mother of Runes.
Yeah, the one-toughness hate, very good in this matchup. The Maelstrom Pulse, I think, will come in as well. It's not the most efficient thing in the world, but it's a good catch-all. And the Crozan Grip and the Pithing Needle, I think there's enough artifacts like Aether Vial and equipment that it's worth bringing in those cards as well.
All right, we also have Disfigure. I imagine he just wants, because it's a creature deck, he wants to load up on removal if possible.
Yeah, if, Disfigure kills nearly everything that Jason brings to the table and does it very efficiently.
All right, so going to our next game here, we have Greg Mitchell on the play. It was interesting. That was a game where we had Jason attacking Greg's mana. Normally the Delver players are the people who are doing mana denial. Is this Death and Tax's role in the meta, or is it more whoever's on the play kind of gets to do that plan?
It's a little bit of both. I think Death and Tax is a little more mana denial oriented here. Bug really only has the Wastelands. Now it has plenty of ways to leverage a mana advantage. In fact, the deck is nothing but those kind of cards. Deathrite Shaman, Daze, Spell Pierce, even Sylvan Library is kind of predicated on having an edge in mana. So it's natural to the way that the Bug Delver list plays, but Death and Taxes has a lot more of that specifically going on. 4 Wastelands alongside 4 Rashadan Ports, and then you have Thalia as well. So much more aggressive mana denial element in Death and Taxes. And it needs it to function in the metagame. These blue tempo decks, of course, get to have Force of Will and Daze, and other ways of protecting themselves from combo decks just doing their thing. Death and Taxes isn't armed with permission. So what they have to do instead is prevent their opponent from casting expensive spells. And so you see these decks just flush with mana denial elements.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense there. So going into the matchup, post board, I feel like it tips more toward Greg now. He had a lot of cards like Hymn to Turok that weren't particularly good in game 1. Expect to see some of those coming out. Like we saw, he gets to replace them all with kill spells.
The cards that he is taking out of his deck are worse than the cards that Jason is taking out of his deck. The cards he's adding to his deck are better than the cards that Jason's adding to his deck. So it does tilt towards Greg, but I would still want to be on the Death and Taxes side of this matchup.
And as soon as we hear our update on the other side, we will let you know. Remember, this is our top 4 match between Greg Mitchell and Jason Smith. This is top 4 of our Legacy Open. On the other side, we have Brian Braun-Duin and Richard Shea. Brian is playing Blue White Miracles. No surprise that they are still on game 1 in that match. He's facing off against Richard Shea's Bug Delver deck, and we'll bring you that if it is still going on at the conclusion of this match.
Brian Braun-Duin, first overall seed, and still, surprisingly enough, searching for his first Open Series win. I mean, you would not think that that was the case. He was the first Season 1 point invite leader, dominated the Open Series, but has not won a trophy yet. I was surprised when I found that out today. I just assumed somewhere along those lines, this guy's won an Open, right? He's been in the top 8 of so many. He has so many Open Series points, complete invitational resume, but it just has not happened.
Yeah, once again, another good performance in the Invitational. He was the last undefeated player yet again in the Invitational. Wasn't able to bring it into a top 8 finish. Finished just outside the top 8, playing for it in the last round.
Yeah, back-to-back Invitationals where that is the story now.
A tragic story, but still an impressive one that you get to tell that story twice.
Right. If it happened in reverse, where he barely made in day 2 and then rattled off a bunch of wins in top 16. You'd go home feeling really good about it, but just the losses came in the opposite order, and now it's a story of heartbreak and despair.
Absolutely. So I want to talk a bit about Bug Delver. So we had, three different Bug Delvers in the top 8. We actually see some different takes on the deck. Some of them, like Greg Mitchell, doesn't seem like he's very committed to a tempo game plan. He's not even, he's running 3 Dazes, a Singleton Spell Pierce. He's running more like big cards like Tombstalker. There are some differences between all the decks. Is it meta dependent, or really these are still all doing the same strategy?
It is meta dependent to some extent. I think that the Bug Delver list, I see too many lists that are 4, 4, 4, 4, 4 of copies of cards. And when you have Ponder and Brainstorm in your deck, it's not really necessary. So these high upside one-ofs like a Vendilion Click, a Tombstalker, a Sylvan Library make a lot of sense to me in this sort of list. So it is metagame dependent up to a point, but I also think that I like Greg's deck kind of structurally more than a lot of the Bug Delver lists I see, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to me for this deck to be that homogenous when you're looking at so many cards.
Yeah. We are underway here, though. Greg Mitchell on the play. He's going to start out with a Ponder. We will see what he goes ahead and gets with it. I believe this is the shuffle off the Misty, so now I'll get to resolve the Ponder. Setting up, it didn't have the Deathrite Shaman. I think that would be the play which he would want most here.
Deathrite or Delver.
We see Abrupt Decay, land on top. They are fetch lands, so if he wants an Abrupt Decay, he can have it mostly free of charge. Doesn't have to keep bad cards to take it.
Yeah, he has to keep one extra mana, which he may want anyway.
Yeah.
And he certainly wants an Abrupt Decay.
Yeah, Abrupt Decay does a lot of work against Death and Taxes. So it answers most of the cards he plays. Jason Smith starting off on turn 1, Aether Vial.
And I believe this will warrant an Abrupt Decay pretty quickly.
Yeah, Death and Taxes, one of the fair decks, it's actually paying for all its spells. And spells actually, as far as like the power to mana cost ratio, aren't overly aggressive. He's playing 1/1s for 1, 2/1s for 2. Aether Vial to me seems like one of the most unfair cards in Death and Taxes.
Yeah, it makes so many of its other cards so much more powerful. Being able to deploy Thalia, Phyrexian Revoker, Stoneforge Mystic, all at the exact right opportunity. Flicker Wisp becomes much more potent at instant speed than it is as a main phase creature.
Yeah, that one to me, when you're saying things become better at instant speed, that one's, the poster child. They're being really good with Aether Vial. And Jason takes the Abrupt Decay goes down. He's going to go ahead and follow it up with a Thalia. Once again, kind of putting a crimp into Greg's mana plan. So it'll probably take his whole turn to answer this if he does have the answer.
And this is a good opening for Jason here. Not only does he have very good plays on turns 1 and 2, but Greg's up to very little. He's bled out 2 Abrupt Decays already, so a lot of the things that Jason casts going forward are just going to stick.
Yeah, usually Delver, this is the game plan Bug Delver wants to play, but usually they want to have a threat on the board while they are doing this.
Yeah, the deck is eminently beatable when it's not out in front of you the whole time.
And Jason Smith going to go to work on that mana. He wastes Greg off of blue mana by hitting that Underground Sea, plays Stoneforge Mystic, or going to try to play Stoneforge Mystic. That's going to score him not an equipment, but it will get a 2-for-1 as Greg has to force it.
I was about to say, I think Jason made a misstep there by not playing around Daze, by firing off the Wasteland first, of course, taking care of Greg's only island. And now Greg down to just some lands and a cantrip. There's a lot of pressure on him to find something like Tarmogoyf or at least Deathrite Shaman off of this to get something going.
Yeah, and you see, this is because Greg's behind. Bug Delver doesn't operate very well from behind it. It does have catch-all cards like Force of Will, but he's having to do 2-for-1 himself to stay into the game. He was on the play, so he was already down a card. He's having to ponder for more gas, and if you look at Jason's hand, Jason can keep this fight going for quite a while.
Yeah, Force of Will is a powerful card when you're fighting over specific things, or the game is being played at a very fast pace. Neither of those things are going on right now, so even though Force of Will is one of Magic's most powerful cards of all time and a legacy staple, they're going to represent a drawback for Greg going forward.
Ponder showed 3 lands, so Greg took the shuffle option on Ponder. He will now be playing off the top of his deck. We will see if he can find a threat. Right now, Greg Mitchell with 3 lands, but nothing going on. And he has 2 cards remaining, and he draws a Tarmogoyf off it.
That's the best thing that Greg can find in this spot.
It's really interesting to watch this happen. So Greg's at 1 card in hand, and we're on turn 4, and I'm kind of thinking, how did we get to this spot? Where did all these? It seems like we've been playing a fair game, and where did all these cards go to? And it seems like Jason's grinding value.
Yeah, I mean, I would say mostly Force of Will. That's where the biggest exchange of resources happened. Jason's on the draw here. He hasn't made a land drop yet. Now he has. But now it's 3 cards in hand to 1 card in hand. It looks a lot closer to what it should be.
Yeah, Tarmogoyf all up to a 5/6 thanks to all that early game action. So Greg with the largest creature on the board. And he's going to continue with some good draws. He has Ponder, going to try to find some more action. Jason Smith did make a Sarah Avenger that turn. Not going to be big enough to brawl with the Tarmogoyf. And we'll see. Greg sees 2 more lands and a Crow's Grip.
Yeah, he knows he needs to find something proactive here. Crozan Grip is a good insurance policy against certain things, but Greg cannot win this game with Tarmogoyf alone. You need some more assistance.
Yeah, it's good on this board right now, but Jason's not done deploying.
Right. Still 3 cards left in hand, so.
We'll see what he can get. Last time he drew a Tarmogoyf straight off the ponder. This time, I don't think he was as fortunate. I believe Wasteland was the draw.
And now he is really living off the top.
Yeah, Verdant Catacombs the play here for Greg Mitchell. I like playing he's playing the fetch land in case he draws a Brainstorm, so he can shuffle away that extra Wasteland. Wasteland not particularly good in this matchup. I think Port and Caracas are the only things you can actually waste.
Horizon Canopy, there's not a lot of targets.
We'll see where Jason goes with this. 4th land for the turn, you see Council's Judgment in hand, along with another Serra Avenger and a Mother of Runes. And thought about judgmenting the Tarmogoyf, but instead it looks like he's going to take this opportunity where Greg doesn't have any action to land that Mother of Runes. She's going to happen alongside Serra Avenger.
Very good chance there that Greg doesn't have a removal spell in hand, because you probably would have seen it remove the Serra Avenger last turn. And now he can develop a board and use a removal spell in the Tarmogoyf next turn. And it's also a hedge in case Greg draws something like Tombstalker or something else that Jason may care about more.
Absolutely. The 2 Serra Avengers in concert could take down this Tarmogoyf. If he don't think he's going to take that risk.
Yeah, no chance. Especially with Mother Runes about to get active. Just take the hit.
Goes down to 10. We'll see if Greg was able to find anything. He's going to go ahead and Wasteland Jason off that Rishadan Port. And draw for Jason Smith. Looks like Thalia will complement Council's Judgment. Not sure he wants to Thalia yet, as that actually will turn off the Council's Judgment in his hand.
I think he's going to probably Council Judgment first this turn, I would guess.
And Serra Avengers, they're going to try to swing for 6, and Golgari Charm is the play for Greg Mitchell. And that shows, had he made that block last turn, he would have gotten 3, lost all his creatures to the Golgari Charm.
It would have been a disaster.
So the Serra Avenger shrunk down to 2/2s. Mother of Runes will give something protection before she exits the battlefield. 4 damage to Greg Mitchell. And we still have a race.
I think it's Council's Judgment time.
Yeah. No way to win the race by removing his opponent's only creature. And he disagrees. He's going to go with the Thalia here.
This is a pretty aggressive line. It's possible Jason's willing to chump block this turn with a Thalia. And again, save the Council's Judgment for something more significant. Or maybe he's playing around Daze, but in that event, playing the Thalia basically locks you out of playing Council's Judgment.
It might be he wants to play around that one of Tombstalker that's in Greg Mitchell's deck. If he does not play the Council's... Right now, he would be stopped by a Tombstalker.
Yes. So maybe we're willing to take one more lump here.
Yep. Goes down to 5. That Tarmogoyf now lethal. He's going to have to start blocking it next turn. Deathrite Shaman the follow-up for Greg Mitchell. So he's going to have some ways to chip at Jason's life total. It's close to dead, but I think the race is still in Smith's favor.
Yeah. No, the fact that he has more flexibility with how he blocks. Greg only has 1 unit of attacking, and Jason has several ways to attack and block is a big edge.
All right, he swings the team, including Thalia. That's going to be a swing for 8. Not exactly lethal, and I think Greg's just going to take it. That drops him down to 1. It does mean that Verdant Catacombs no longer a land. And Jason Smith did draw the 4th land, able to cast Council's Judgment into his own Thalia.
I do like Jason's play better if he knows there's a land on top of the deck, that's for sure.
Absolutely. He votes for Tarmogoyf. Greg votes for Tarmogoyf as well, and he cannot do it. Jason Smith, 2-0, moves on to the finals.
Very impressive showing. Greg's feels like his deck is just a little, kind of like a clunkier version of Jason's in the matchup. He, Thalia creates all sorts of problems. He occasionally has issues with colored mana. He has to spend time cantripping where Jason just gets to put stuff on the board, and that little extra bit of efficiency was all Jason needed. And Serra Avenger was also really important for Jason in those games. Greg not really that well equipped to block it. Of course, he has quite a few removal spells, but it's outside of Disfigure range. His Abrupt Decays are quite taxed already, and it did, most of the heavy lifting damage-wise in both of those games.
Yeah, Serra Avenger is a card that we see go in and out of favor with Death and Taxes sometimes. He has a full commitment. He has 3 Serra Avengers, and yeah, you're absolutely right. They were very strong in those games.
I think Serra Avenger is kind of on the way back a little bit because of True Name Nemesis. It's good to have flyers against that card. That's one of the better elements you can have. So no surprise to see it back deck in the metagame, and even against a list that had no true name nemesis at all, Saravenger was the heavy lifter in those games. Very impressive.
Yeah, so we will move on to our other semifinal match here. This is in Game 3. This is Brian Braun-Duin playing Blue White Miracles against Richard Shea playing Bug Delver. We saw both of these players win their quarterfinals match. 6 Delver decks in the top 8. Only one of them remain right now.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy stuff. I think the matchup is good for Bug here. Abrupt Decay plus a clock plus soft permission. It's a good recipe for being Brian, but that said, you can still lose games to counterbalance top if you don't have an Abrupt Decay handy, and the sweepers are a problem for Bug Delver as well. So Richard's build, if I remember correctly, a little more anti-control oriented, a bunch of hymns in the deck, a main deck Jace.